Right. Everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We are here today to talk about how do you create an unforgettable event. Now, I've worked on, I think at this point, over 4,000 events, which is a little terrifying. I've been to not nearly that many. Having been in the weeds, a lot of event planners, we wanted to kind of have the conversation. How do you really make an event as good as possible? I think some of the most fascinating stuff has come over the last 5 years, right? As COVID has come out, we have moved into this world where you have to be better. There's more competition for time. There's more competition for events. And you see people coming to events and not even going to the actual event, but really just staying outside and trying to meet people, network, and sell their wares. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple things that we find to be some of the most useful. Now, if you are a seasoned event planner, you probably know most of this stuff. But I think people out there, especially who are speakers, are going to really understand that there's a side of this business they don't know. And that's something that we really want to dive into, is really helping people understand the entire industry and just share our POV. You may disagree, so please don't hesitate to drop a disagreement in the comment, or drop questions. We're also going to throw up a QR code so that you can learn more information about suggestions we make for the best possible events that you can build. That'll go up on the screen at some point, and feel free. Also hit us up on all of our social channels, Vayner Speakers, and we will have all the information. And in case you have to leave early, we will also be recording this and sharing it online afterwards. So please, any platform you're on, don't hesitate to drop some questions. We have a few questions we're going to get into that have come up before today, but across all platforms, do not hesitate. Throw us your questions, and we're going to dive right in. So one thing that I think is really key, that I want to dive into, and I use that word key intentionally, is the keynote. Now, I think there's a misconception here. A lot of people call every speech a keynote. I also hear all the time, we want to have a TED style event. TED means you're going to be 18 minutes or less, and you're going to have a very unique subject that hasn't been discussed before. So when people tell me they're doing a TED style event, I don't really know what that means, because everyone has their own opinion. A keynote is really the number one main stage speaker for the event. These days, every speech is referred to as a keynote. That's fine. We at this point know to understand that you're just referencing every speech as a keynote. Reality is, keynote is like the number one thing. That's why people are coming. That's the biggest piece of content you're going to put out there on your event. You want all the eyeballs, all the energy and the attention going to the keynote. But the reality is, every speech is not a keynote, despite what you call it. Now, there are speeches. Those can typically be seen as plenary speeches. Breakout speeches, they're called a number of different things. Even if they're on the main stage, they're not necessarily a keynote, but that's really just the verbiage. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's what people think about it. And so one of the things that we've noticed is that the speaker actually be something that people talk about more than anything else at an event. A really good, impactful speaker is something that will reverberate well beyond just their session. So if they're on stage for 45 minutes and they do their job, you can guarantee that afterwards, in cocktail parties, at lunches, at breakfast, during meetings, people will still continue to talk about that speaker and their subject matter in a really significant way. And something that event planners, the best ones I've worked with, do a great job of, is they know how to plug that speaker into a way where they are going to help steer the conversation or control the narrative of the event. If you are, hosting an event in Vegas and you're starting day one at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday, you got to have some high energy speaking, because you got to wake people up. They fly in from all over. They're probably really excited to be in Las Vegas. You got to wake them up. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. It's not just about the content. It's about the style. It's about the format. It's about all the different things that a speaker brings to the table. But you have to really lean into these different differences to accentuate your event. And it's the same thing at the end of an event. When people are wrapping things up, they're probably, looking at their watches. They've got planes to catch. They, are going to be going back to work either the next day or after the weekend. And the speaker is someone who can come in and help them leave with something to think about. It's going to drop some knowledge, and they're going to help them carry whatever is going on at that overall event into their next workday, into their weekend, into their personal lives in a really powerful way. So it's important to recognize when the speaker is actually presenting, but also how they're going to impact the rest of the conversations that are happening at the event, right? Every event, if it's a corporate audience, right, you've got to have, some salesy stuff. You've got to have some information about the organization. All that stuff has to happen. But you have to remember there's two kinds of speakers. There's speakers who are going to come in. If you're doing an accounting conference and you bring in an accountant or someone who's going to speak about accounting, that's an endemic speaker. That is someone who's going to come in and help you advance the conversation you're having. You can also bring what I refer to as a non-endemic speaker, someone who's a basketball player, has nothing to do with accounting. It's really valuable because you're shaking things up. You're getting people thinking differently, not just kind of falling into a trap of like, okay, speaker after speaker after speaker, but they're going to be entertained. So every speaker brings something unique to the audience, and there's nothing wrong with having one speaker versus another, but know that the speaker itself is going to dictate what happens with the adventure that you're taking everyone on throughout an event. If it's half a day, full day, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it might be, all of these speakers fit together within the grand scheme of everything else that you're doing at the event. So it's really important to kind of navigate your agenda and recognize what a speaker is going to do for you at the event. Something else that we also find is the wrong speaker can actually be way more impactful than just what you're paying them. Sure, speakers can cost a lot of money. And when you're spending money in the wrong people, it doesn't feel good. Your bosses are probably looking at you like, what is this? Why did we spend any amount of money on this person? But what happens is people wind up talking about that bad speaker for being bad, just like they would have talked about a good speaker being great. What they talk about won't be as important as who they were and why were they there. And so it's really important that you vet the speakers you're bringing in, that you think about what you want to talk about, that you guide them. Now, I often remind people, speakers are not talking heads. They will customize their content. They will make sure that they're speaking to your audience if they're doing their job well. But bad speakers can really bring the whole thing down if you try to tell them what to say and how to say it. Speakers are speakers, right? They're not talking heads, so they will take the information you're giving them, but they're going to put it in their own words. And I think it's really important to recognize that speakers you're paying them for a reason. You're paying them for a service. You're paying them for the value they bring. And so you have to let them do their thing, but give them context, help them along the way to maximize what the opportunity is, but still let them do their thing. Because a bad speaker getting up there and trying to fill in all the little gaps with your words and your messages and connect to all the other sessions, it's going to derail them in a really bad way. And when a speaker gets on stage and isn't doing a good job, it actually is going to do real damage to your event, right? It's the thing people talk about, but then also the next speaker, people are going to be a little less excited about. They're going to be nervous. They're not going to think that this person's any good, even if they're great. So they're coming in with a preconceived notion that's simply not fair. And I also think that it's something where you have to do your homework, right? On the last session, we talked a lot about for speakers, how they can elevate their brand. Well, a lot of those things that speakers have to do is show what their value is, show what they're worth, and show what they can do. As an event planner, it's your job to actually look behind the curtain, see what they do, see what they talk about, talk to them to understand how it's going to fit in, and don't settle for platitudes. Make sure you get specifics. You have to know what the speaker is going to bring to the table and not just some amorphous idea that you think resonates. And so the homework you do really comes out on stage and you have these speakers get up there. And you also find that you're just going to bring someone in who's safe. You might as well bring in someone who's forgettable, right? If you're going to spend money on the right people. During COVID, we saw a lot of changes happening, especially with virtual events. Groups would bring in one huge name. They'd spend their entire budget on one name, drive attendance, drive traffic. And then all the other speakers were free speakers that, or even better, someone's paying to be on your stage, right? Virtual or otherwise, that's not a great plan. You want to make sure that you're going to have a well-rounded entire agenda, right? That doesn't mean every speaker has to be a high-paid speaker. There are amazing speakers at lower price points. We see that all the time, but make sure that the speakers work together, that they kind of come together as a puzzle, and that they understand what you're asking them to do, so that they actually deliver a powerful message, right? You don't want a speaker coming in and just giving you platitudes that is going to be safe, that is going to be forgettable, and it's going to bring down the overall vibe of the event, because the best speakers will uplift the energy and uplift the spirits of everyone there, so that when they're in lunch, when they're in their working sessions, they're bringing that same energy. They're really going to help elevate everything else that's going on because the speaker reverberates well beyond the stage. Something that we actually don't talk about enough that I think should be discussed is kind of, what does the speaker actually bring to the table that's going to be memorable? And I think it's something that, you look at who a speaker is and what they do, and message is always key, but how they deliver that message and what that message actually means for your audience. Because sometimes you bring in a great message, but the audience isn't ready for it. It's not going to land. So you have to remember that speakers can really help transform. They can move the ball, right? If it's something where you're going to bring them in just to have a conversation about a cool topic, that's fine, but that's not going to be remembered. That's not going to make an event special, because that special cool thing, right? It may just be a flash in the pan. What you need to do is listen to your audience, understand what they're looking for, and help get them there, right? That can be through a lot of different things, but the message itself of the speaker should help move where they are today. They should leave your event somewhere else. And you want that to be somewhere good, not somewhere where they're like, oh, no, AI is not for me. It's like, no, no, no. We want to educate you with information to help you able to use the information in a way that's going to transform who you are, what you do, and the way your business is run. We also feel that speakers need to connect with the audience, and every speaker does so differently. You should be looking for what do you want that speaker to do to your audience? Do you want them to challenge your audience? Do you want them to make them feel understood? Do you want to make them feel anything, right? What is that emotion that you're trying to get? And the best speakers think about that as they present their talk, right? When they're preparing, they are thinking about how they want their audience to feel. And so if you give them that guidance of, hey, this is a high performing team, but we just raised the sales goals. Well, that changes the dynamic versus, hey, we had a really rough year, but we really need to rebound this year. Well, it's a different conversation. The audience is coming in with their own perceived notions, and you need to come out of that with a different viewpoint. And so if you bring in the right speaker, you're helping advance what that audience is learning. You're helping advance where the company is going to be. And at the end of that session, they should feel something differently. I also think it's something where name recognition is honestly overrated. Now, I've worked with some of the biggest celebrities in the world. There are some amazing speakers out there. There are many speakers who don't even give a speech who are amazing, that are celebrities. But you have to recognize that there's two schools of thought here. Are people going to show up to your event because of the speaker? Or do people have to show up to your event? Because if people have to show up to your event because it's your corporate event and they have no choice, you do have a bit of an advantage because you get to program the event knowing that who you bring in is all message based. It doesn't matter who the names are. Now, sure, you sometimes want to, inflate the company's ego or appeal to the CEO and bring in their favorite person, but just bringing in a big name doesn't really get the job done. You don't need to find someone who is, a diamond in the rough, but sometimes spending less money can be more value for you because those people are going to be working harder for the dollars. And sometimes celebrities are too guarded. Now, I'm a huge Celtics fan, so I feel crazy using a Kobe Bryant example here, but Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, was a phenomenal basketball player. I worked with his for the event that did the very first talk he gave after he retired. And I got to tell you, he was glowing in the green room. It could not, just a magnetic personality, incredible stories, shaking everyone's hand. There was a kid that came through from one of the sponsors, and it was so wonderful with the child. It was amazing, right? On stage, completely different story. He was so clammed up, just shut down, wasn't giving any information. Now, thank God for ESPN's Mike Greenberg, who was able to draw out amazing stories from Kobe, but it took a while. And I think it's something that shows you, people were excited to see Kobe. But they didn't leave with this impassioned, powerful lessons that they could have. And now Kobe got much better over the years, before he tragically passed away. But I think it's something that, you have to look at not just who the person is, but what are they actually going to talk about? Now, it's fine to bring someone in for a life and career conversation. I've done it hundreds of times. But you have to recognize that life and career is just entertainment. If you want to just entertain, that's totally fine. But you can also find ways of entertaining with information, right? We work with a number of speakers, and there are plenty more out there who do a really good job of bringing entertainment into their session so that it's not purely a information dump, but it's something that entertains, right? Whether it is an artist who's literally painting a masterpiece on stage, whether it's someone who's getting up on stage and performing, magic or mental gymnastics, or it's someone who gets on stage with a DJ. There's different ways of doing it, right? The days of the lecture at you speaker are far behind us. So it's really important that you think about what you actually want before you book them, because I can't tell you how often I've heard from event planners and candidly other agents that some of the biggest name speakers and some of those speakers that cost the most money fall flat, because the expectations are so high and it's almost impossible to deliver on those expectations. Whereas you find the right speaker, someone who does it 50 times a year, not someone who does it once or twice, they're going to deliver. They know what works with the audience, right? That great, celebrity may be fun to have, and, it's going to be great for the photo line, but don't kid yourself into thinking that they're going to be bringing amazing content. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, but I will tell you, it's far fewer that great celebrity brings great content than someone who does this for a living. I also think it's really important that you realize that the name of a speaker, right, their celebrity profile may not necessarily resonate. So now I know my mom is out there watching this because where else would she be doing? Like, what else should she has to watch her son. But I always use her as an example because I remember when I was working with Simon Sinek and she did not know who Simon Sinek was. There's no reason she should know who Simon Sinek is, right? But the man sold millions of books. He makes $250,000 for a speech, right? He is one of the most prolific speakers in the world. But the name doesn't mean everything to everyone. And so you recognize your audience. And it's the same thing with sports, right? Cal Ripken Jr., one of the most legendary baseball players of all time. He does events all over, but I can tell you he's much more famous in Baltimore than he is anywhere else. He played in Baltimore his entire career, right? But you bring him and drop him into Colorado, people go, why is Cal Ripken Jr. here? We want John Elway, right? Know your audience, know graphically where you are, but know that it's not just about tying it to the geographics. It's more about just understanding who that audience is and what they want to hear. Do they need to be inspired? Do they need to be motivated? Do they need to be challenged? Are they seeking information? Are they seeking connectivity to their customers? Are they seeking connectivity to the company at large? There's different conversations that can take place, and every speaker brings something different to the table. And also, it's something where if you're doing it right, every event has a lot of intention behind it, right? From the moment, my favorite event planners, I'll just say it right now, are the ones who think through every detail, right? The moment you walk in, there's something special. We were just at an incredible event in Henderson, Kentucky. When we walked into the auditorium, they had the entire team welcoming us with jazz hands, and we walked through a tunnel, and it was magical, right? Now, that's not something I expect most events to do, but that was authentic to who they were, and they were so excited. That was powerful. You have to think through every little detail, and that includes the speakers, because talent is very unique. They wouldn't be coming to your stage if they didn't have something unique about them. So you have to recognize what's unique about them and help draw that out, but figure out what unique talent do you want for your unique audience. Because we have a saying around here, no two events are the same, but no two speakers are the same and no audiences are the same. So recognize the differences and try to program for that. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the conversations that continue after the fact. Once speaker's off stage, people talk, right? I mentioned at the beginning, people are going to continue that conversation, talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, what they agreed with, what they didn't agree with. I wrote about this recently, but most people don't go to the movies alone. Now, I love to, so I'm probably not the poster child for this. But the reality is you like to go to the movies because after the movie, you talk about the movie. Did you feel that? Did you see this moment? Like, did you see that coming? Or I never saw the bad guy was going to be that guy. Like, you want to have a conversation because you have a shared experience. That's what speakers do. The shared experience isn't always good, but it's still shared. And so if you think about bringing a speaker to your event and you're not sure how to do it, think about what you want people talking about after the fact, because they're going to talk and you can help steer that conversation in a really powerful way. So remember that if you want to create a memorable event, make it worth remembering. We're going to dive into some questions here. So please keep dropping these questions into the platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, anywhere you see this. Please keep dropping questions. We're going to also throw up the QR code to link out to all of our social feeds so you can get some more information on planning a great event. Great. Here we got our first question. I love this. How do you know if a speaker is actually good live versus just having a big online presence or resume? It's a great question. I often tell people a social profile isn't something you need to have, but it helps. Ultimately, you need proof. Think about test driving a car. When you're shopping for a car, you can see great images of it online. You can watch commercials and see it zipping around mountain roads. But ultimately, until you get in the car, you don't know what it's to drive. I think it's really important to take that same analogy and use that for speakers, right? It's one thing to just see one clip of a speaker. Ask a question. Ask that speaker. Ask their agent. Can they talk about this? Is this comfortable with? What's their preferred format? Can we talk about this thing? We just had a conversation with a speaker who, on a pre-call with an event, they were already booked. They're a well-known author, so the audience or the organizer knew exactly who they were booking, but then said, hey, we saw this social clip. Would love for you to talk a little bit about this. He said, I was asked a very specific question. That was just like off the top of my head. That's not anything I'd ever talk about on stage, right? It's important to understand who you're bringing to the table. And I think it's something that every event planner knows this, that you have to dive deep, ask the tough questions, look hard, ask for references, check out testimonials, look at as many videos as you can, because you'll often see something. Is it the same speech every single time? Are there unique things that are brought to the table? Will they fold in at other elements of things that we're asking them for? That stuff comes out, but only when you're having really good questions, good dialogue in advance of booking that speaker. Now, I will also point out most speakers won't get on the phone before they get booked. That's usually not a problem. You can still ask questions. Maybe it's via email, maybe it's with an agent, maybe it's with another event planner, but you still can't ask questions. So ask as many questions as you need to feel comfortable, because the last thing you want to do is book a speaker and then be very uncomfortable with the results you get. All right. Next question is, how early should event planners start thinking about booking talent? This is a fascinating one. When I started in this industry, it was almost like you had to have 6 to 8 months to plan, right? If you didn't book a speaker 6 to 8 months out, you weren't going to be able to do anything. Most events, especially associations, are announcing next year's speakers at this year's event. Then we saw that shrinking, right? Over the last, 10 years ago, it was probably 4 to 6 months before you'd book a speaker. Then during COVID, it was, 2 weeks. Now we see two very different dynamics. Sure, we're booking events for the fall, but we're still getting requests for events in June, right? That's in less than 2 weeks. We're also still getting requests for June 2027. So I think what's happened is the event planners are secure in their job, who know what they're doing, who know they're going to be around for a long time and work with the same organization for a long time. They can plan further out. That gives them a competitive advantage. They get to book anyone and everyone, and they can plan out and they can craft a really well thought out agenda. Now, if you're booking an event next month, you still can, but it means not every speaker is going to be available, right? Not every venue is going to be available either. So you got to really be thoughtful about what are you planning and how are you planning it. Just like planning a wedding, the further out you plan, the more realistic it's going to be to get all your friends there. If you send out an invitation on 30 days notice, you can't expect people to travel to France for your wedding. But if you give them a 6 month notice, drop a save the date, that's a chance to actually get the people you want to come. So the same thing with a speaker. Know that their schedules are crazy. Now, sometimes you get lucky, especially if you're booking like a celebrity and they know their schedule maybe 3 months out. They don't know their schedule 9 months out. So if you're booking them 9 months out, there's a decent chance they'll have to cancel because of a production, right? But 3 months out, they're like, well, I know exactly what my schedule is, so I either can or can't do this. So there is something that you run the risk of when you're booking a celebrity further out. But ultimately, if you're paying them to be on your ticket, right, on the poster, and they cancel, you still have people coming because of that. So it's a different problem that you're going to have to navigate, but it's still a problem nonetheless. So just be thoughtful about that. Great. We got a question here from, my good friend, Mike Boyd. Is this from Boyd? On the screen. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. When an emerging speaker is trying to be discovered, booked, should they focus on creating LinkedIn content, and how would you rank the social media platforms in terms of discovery? My friend, Mike Boyd, great question. I think LinkedIn is number one. Now, LinkedIn does a really good job of helping you engage, because with the news feed and with the suggested posts at the top right corner, it's telling you what to talk about. Give your perspective. Now, don't give your perspective on, a trade war if you have nothing to do with, if you're talking about something completely different, right? But if you work in HR, or you talk about the future of work and there's massive layoffs at Amazon, that's a great thing to dive into, right? If you engage with the content and share your perspective, people are going to see that, engage with it back, but also see you for more than just the one thing that they may have heard you say. So when you engage on LinkedIn, it expands the horizon of things you can talk about. However, on the flip side, Instagram is still a very powerful tool for discovery. People are finding other speakers on Instagram, whether they find them on stage and it was shared with them, whether it's a motivational clip, or it could just be a bio piece that somebody else was creating about them. It is still a place people are going to discovery. YouTube is also a great place, especially for long form content. So I don't recommend ever putting up a full speech on YouTube, but longer clips can do much better on YouTube than they can anywhere else. Otherwise, things like Facebook is a great opportunity to have a community and ask questions. LinkedIn groups too, right? If you want to talk to other event planners, other speakers, other people in the business, find out what's working for them, people they liked, ask the questions, engage your audience. It works really well. But those are the big ones. TikTok, obviously, another discovery place. I think it's harder to know whether or not someone who's successful on TikTok is a great speaker because of the way the platform is laid out. But if you start there and then pivot to another platform to kind of do a little bit more digging and research on them, that's great. But I think because the platform rewards short form content, it's easier to almost like seem like a better speaker than you are. But honestly, as Gary would say, be on every platform. You got to be where the eyeballs are. Not everyone is on YouTube. Not everyone is on LinkedIn. Everyone is on Facebook. You have to be where the audiences are. So get in front of them any way you can. Great. We got another question here. What trends are you seeing in 2026 when it comes to what audiences actually want from live events and speakers? So one of my most surprising trends, I would say, is workshops and experiential is growing. It is something that we've seen for a couple of years now, but it is not slowing down. So we hear all the time, we want someone who's going to do something more than just a speech. We want an experience. Okay. There's plenty of speakers who do that. Right. We work with Max Major, who combines mentalism and speaking, talking about body language, communication, all these different things. It's fascinating. And it's so much more than just a talk. It's entertainment. We also see that there are groups that we had a Gary booked for an event in New Jersey a couple of years ago. And then they came to us a few years back and they said, we only have workshops at our events now, no speakers. That blew my mind, but that's not the last time I've heard that. More and more people want to give their audiences as much content as they can. If you're coming to our event, we want to make sure you leave with something, and more than just a fun story, but leave with something actionable. And workshops are really give you the opportunity to dive in. Now, some speakers can do workshops, some speakers can't. Some speakers have pre-built stuff. Other speakers are like, I'll work with you to build something out. It's worth asking those questions because I think that the engaged audiences really enjoy that stuff. And it gives them a chance to kind of be a little bit more interactive, which audiences really enjoy. And it's also, I think, to be frank, it's a great counterpoint to a speech. Doesn't mean you have to do just workshops or just experiential, but mix it up and have speakers, have fireside chats, one-on-ones, full audience Q&As. We're always messing with different formats, especially with Gary, to figure out what works and how to do something better. It doesn't all work for every audience, but I think once you know your audience, you know how to deliver for them. So to me, it's a different formats, and especially the experiential stuff that just seeing a rise because it allows for a differentiation from all the other speakers. Another question here. Outside of the usual keynote or fireside chat, what are some of the most unique and popular on-site connection experiences, activations you're doing right now? To be clear, we don't host events, so I want to put that out there. I've worked on a million events. I've run plenty of events as well. But I think that the actual authentic engagement that you can create off stage is massive. I think any event that's worth its salt, people say the content is usually what got them to the event, but the thing they're looking forward to and the thing they enjoyed the most was actually the networking. So I think you have to be really creative with what that looks like. I've seen it before. You just say, hey, it's a networking lunch. And then you put a bunch of tables in a room. Everyone's just going to gravitate towards the people they know. They're not going to look for new connections. You have to force people into having new connections and doing that. There's a myriad of ways of things you can do to connect the dots. But it also starts before the event. And it goes long after the event. When we were just doing an event in Miami at the Possible Conference, and I asked the audience the question, I said, great, I want to know how many of you actually went on LinkedIn or another platform and said you were coming to the event before you got here? And almost everyone raised their hand. People wanted to have connections. They wanted to network. They wanted to see people they haven't seen in a while, and they wanted to know who's going to be at the event. They did so by using social media, and that made the event a better experience for them. They were able to connect on site. They were able to connect off site for meals, for drinks, all these different things. Meet at an event, meet at a panel to share the experience with someone you want to share it with. So I think that using some really powerful tools like LinkedIn and using some thought-provoking, interesting ideas that event planners always have to connect people before the event, during the event, and then after the event, engage your community, keep the conversation going, and people will enjoy that. All right, we've got time for one more question. So this is the last one here, folks. And remember, we're going to drop that QR code again, get our event planner guide and some more information that you might find useful. So our last question here today is, what's the biggest mistake event planners make when booking a keynote speaker? I think the biggest mistake is booking a name and not a speaker. I think too often people just see a name. They say, oh, well, this person worked at a cool company, but they don't actually think about what the content is. And I think people need to recognize that content isn't always what you expect. And then the other piece of this is they force people into giving speeches, and then they realize they didn't get the content they wanted. If you really want specific content, and the speaker says, I don't talk about that, you could say, are you open to a Q&A? Can we ask you the questions that we want to know the answers to? You control the narrative, you control the content, and you control the outcome. So everyone, thank you so much. We're going to drop that QR code. I don't know where. Yep, I got it right. It's over here. I'm definitely not a weatherman, although that was always my dream. But thank you all for joining us today on how do you create an unforgettable event. Stay tuned next time. And we're going to keep these events coming. So if there's things you want us to talk about, please let us know. Drop some comments. We'll engage, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you.